That's on the roof.
Welcome to Dean at Stumps, the cricket encyclopedia.
The Sri Lankans are stunned. The Zimbabweans are jubilant. Look what that means to them. The first ever series victory against Sri Lanka.
Hello and very warm welcome to Dean at Stumps. Thank you very much indeed to Ruvimbo Chakoreka for giving us Sport on Drive. And wasn't it nice to hear the late, great Aaliyah? Don't know why, but whenever I hear that song of hers, I still get a very big lump in my throat. And I think of the tragedy that happened back in 2001 when she was sadly killed in that plane crash. Right, let's get into the show, shall we? Because we have something very, very special tonight and very different. And it gives me a great pleasure, a great deal of pleasure, to welcome to the show the Zimbabwe Differently Enabled cricket team. And you absolutely heard that 100% correct. The Zimbabwe Differently Enabled cricket team. So what does that mean? Well, it basically means that despite the fact that they are disabled, they still play cricket. And we have in studio with us on my right-hand side, we have a gentleman who bowls a mean off-spinner, Sanjay Patel. How are you, Sanjay?
Good, thanks yourself, Dean. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. It's nice to catch up with you. It's been many years, so it's good to catch up and have a chat again in the studio as opposed to at the ground.
Very true.
And then on my left, I have the head coach, Walter Musakwa. How are you doing, Walter? Welcome to the show.
Well, thank you very much.
Excellent, great to have you. And then the assistant coach, as well as conditioning trainer, something which I definitely need is a bit of conditioning, is Glenn Nyamanyauta. Hello, Glenn. How are you? Welcome.
How are you, Dean?
I'm always well. Thank you very much. Okay, so let's get into this rather remarkable and unique story. Walter, I'm going to start with you because you are the head coach. So you deal with a number of players with various disabilities that now play cricket. It is something that was very unheard of up to very recently. So when did all of this start happening? When did people and young men and I guess even, well, I'm hoping women, but when did people with disabilities start to be introduced to cricket?
Well, in other countries it's been a while now, but in Zimbabwe we started last year up to now. That's when we started introducing cricket to people with disabilities, and we not only deal with one disability, but we also deal with every disability. So which means there are categories. We've got the blind, we've got the physically disabled, we've got the visually impaired, and we also have those on wheelchairs. They also play cricket.
And that's table cricket. That's known as table cricket. Is that right? Okay.
True.
So when we speak of the visually impaired / blind cricket team, do you also have it categorized into B1, B2 and B3? So B1 means that you have a certain amount of sight, B2 means that you'd have a less amount of sight, and B3 is like me, yours truly, totally and utterly blind with no light perception whatsoever. Is that the same principle with you as well?
Yeah, that's how we deal with it, yes.
And then Sanjay, I want to have a bit of a chat with you. So you are an off-spinner. You've always loved the art of off-spin. You were a very big fan of Prosper Tseya when Prosper was at his peak about 10 or so years ago.
True.
So tell me about what it is that your disability, what is it that enables you to play cricket with this wonderful bunch of people?
Okay, I have bilateral club foot.
Right.
And that's my disability. It also has a bit of ataxia, which means the leg muscles have less power when playing. But what brought me about playing cricket, I think you know me from way back. Cricket's been my passion. It's been something I've always loved. I never got into mainstream cricket too much. And then this opportunity came up, and I didn't hesitate to grab it. And I think since off spinning, I've been great at my bowling off spinning, but I've also improved a lot on my batting as well, because I do up the order as well. So I've become a really top class all rounder, to the team, to be honest.
Nice, nothing like a little bit of confidence. That's very good.
Yeah.
Okay, so Walter and Rovimbo, we'll bring you in later because you actually play with these guys, don't you?
Oh yes, in terms of social cricket I have, and he has given me quite some difficult times as Sanjay, but definitely a wonderful bunch of guys and definitely passionate about their cricket.
So, Walter, how do you and the rest of the coaching team how did you get the word out that, listen, this is what we're going to be doing? We want the disabled people, the disabled community, to start playing cricket in Zimbabwe. As you said, it's been, in other countries, England, Australia, South Africa, and so on. It's very, very prominent. But unfortunately, in this part of the world, it's not that prominent. So how were you able to spread the word to anybody who is blind or has any form of disability that to be a part of the of this team?
Well, we have been marketing through social media and television, and we also, when we meet someone in the street who has got disability, we conscientize them and we tell them, no, we are doing this program, and most of them, they respond positively and they come to practice. That's how they are joining in.
And Glenn, one of the things that must be quite an interesting situation to find yourself in is, how do you condition the players who are physically disabled? Because it must be very difficult, like, even though I'm blind, I can still do push-ups. Well, not anymore because I put on so much weight, but generally speaking, I can do push-ups, sit-ups, I can punch a punch bag, I can kick, I can jog short distances, not long anymore. But the point is that, blind people certainly can do a lot more in that regard than somebody, for example, who would be in not necessarily in a wheelchair, because they'll be playing table cricket, but any of the other forms that are currently available that they play. So how do you communicate and how do you make the players understand that, look, despite the fact that you have a disability, I'm going to make sure that you are conditioned and that you are as fit and as strong as you can possibly be within reason?
First of all I can say is at first it was a bit difficult, but I learned to listen to the guys, and also they need empathy, not sympathy. That's the first thing. And also everyone, you have to listen to them, since everyone has got special needs and how they adapt. Each and every individual is different. So I have to have a specific program for each and every person, which is different.
So explain a bit what a program would be for one player, and then explain what a program would be for another player.
Okay, let's say how someone who have got like amputee,
Right.
And a leg amputee, how they do, like, let's say burpees is different. Burpees or how they do their
yes
how they do their sit-ups is different. So they adapt different, and they also use different like equipment.
Right.
Each and everyone has to have, some may use bands, some they have to use like benches. It's different all around.
That is amazing. So so they would use those bars and benches in order to do some form of a sit-up or as you say, a burpee or a pull-up even, I guess.
Yes.
And these bars and benches, that must be very expensive. I would imagine in terms of finances, like every other sporting industry in Zimbabwe, you must be struggling a great deal.
Yes, that has been a major setback. Like, some guys, they have been running, they do not have like artificial legs, so they'll be running on one and fielding on one. So they give it their all. It's actually, how they give it their all, it's actually quite humbling. It's
Very humbling, absolutely.
It's a good motivator.
And Walter, how did you get involved? How did you decide that, this is what I want to do? I could very easily have tried my best to become a school coach at a fully enabled team, one of the main schools. There's many areas that you could have covered. What made you decide that these are the boys or these are the people I want to look after and coach?
Well, it's all about passion, trying to make a difference in someone else's life. that is the main reason that made me to choose to come to this other side of cricket. And also, like what Coach Glenn has been saying, it's actually a challenge when you are starting, but as you go on, you get more interested, and you get, with the passion these guys they present, it gives you the power to go on and the will to want to work with them.
I remember when I was at school and we had our athletics trainers and everything else, they're only human like us. And sometimes they would get to a point where they were trying to explain something over and over again. And for some reason, one of the students just wouldn't get it. They'd say, you must hold the shot put at a certain angle, or as opposed to pushing the shot put, you're actually just throwing it, various little technical stuff that they're trying to help us on. And after some time of explanation, because they're only human, they get to a point where they get frustrated and they even get angry. Do you two as coaches also sometimes feel that, man, how many more times do I have to show you something? Or has that never been a problem? Is it just more that you are in awe of what they're able to do?
Well, with the with the kind of experience that we have, I've been coaching in mainstream since 2000. So when I was starting my coaching career, that's when I was getting frustrated that someone is not getting what I'm trying to say. But as you get more experience, you tend to be more patient, and you devise many ways of trying to put out your point to someone.
Sanjay, obviously you've been a cricket lover and a cricket fan for a very long time. So you said that you took it up last year, is that correct?
Yeah.
So I mean, in honestly speaking, despite the fact that you've come on in leaps and bounds, you still we would refer to as a puppy, because I mean, you only started it last year. And how were you able to establish so quickly that, I am an off spinner who can bat, and now I want to start working on my batting?
Okay, just to touch on like what the coaches had said.
Yeah.
Even myself as a player, I tend to get frustrated quickly when I'm not getting something done or I'm not achieving something. So kudos to the coaches, because they've had a lot of patience and perseverance with us. I mean, there comes a December last year, I almost literally quit. I literally gave up. I had stopped going to practice, but they didn't give up on me. They kept calling me. They kept bothering me. At one stage I was even like, "Ish, can't I change my number? These guys are annoying," But they kept in and they kept nagging, and look, they've brought me this far. Credit as well to Coach Glenn, because Coach Glenn, I've been out of playing for 7 years. I only came back last year. And the fitness level I have now is mainly credit to him and Coach Musakwa, because I was really unfit. I'd say I was kind of like you. I'd grown a belly and, that laid-back life, that's where I was, and not inspired at all by cricket at that stage of time. Then they brought me back, and 1 or 2 practice sessions, and I saw this ball turning and spinning and doing this. I saw myself playing some serious, Brendan Taylor drives and shots, and I thought, wow, is this me, And from there, I've picked on. I've just kicked on, going on and as you see, our games are social with Ruvimbo and them, but as boys, we've got targets. We've got targets that, on our personal level, yes, it's a social game, but are my figures better than the last game? Have I scored more than the last game? That's what we look at, because we're so passionate about cricket and where we want to go with how we're going as a player. And that's where Coach Musakwa says that it's inspiring. I think Ruvimbo can come in as well. I mean, on how when you get onto a pitch with us, how you feel afterwards,
Yeah, let's hear it from you, Rovimbo.
Well, I can tell you it's an intimidating atmosphere, Dean. It's much like what the Australians used to do to the Poms, but we'll talk about Ashes later. Nonetheless, I mean, the very first time we got to play them, it was one of my first social cricket games. That was at Sunrise's cricket club, sports club.
Yes, their lamb roasters, their lamb is very nice. Their lamb curry is very nice there.
There you go, Dean, with the meat. But getting to the meat and potatoes of the issue, pun intended. So it was absolutely amazing the way that they had so much passion, and we actually got we actually got belted around the park. Did we, Dean?
Really?
And it was just really good. But I can say as well, in terms of their fitness, it's absolutely fantastic. The way they were able to get around to balls that you would have hit in the outfield and things like that.
Sorry to interrupt you. I mean, there's this one guy who's got one leg in our team. Now, our opposition, like Ruvimbo and them, tend to target him being the weakest link in our team. The problem is with that is he's our best outfielder. So they keep trying to go through him and they're not achieving anything. And then Ruvimbo was getting frustrated a few times. He tried to go through the guy in the air, on the ground. Nothing went through.
It definitely was frustrating, Dean. But all I can say is that they're absolutely great.
So tell us more about some of the other cricketers. Who's the captain of the team, and who are your pace bowlers? Who are your medium pacers? How would a wicketkeeper? What criteria would a wicketkeeper have in order to play?
Okay. Our captain is George Kurwa. And then to answer your question on the wicket keeping, our wicket keeper is a gentleman who's got some leg impairments on him, but that doesn't stop him from going after a ball or so, or doing anything a normal wicket keeper would do. So I don't think there's as per se a restriction to him being there. And then in terms of our other bowlers, we've got a right arm seamer by the name of Luke Bashiri. He's quite fast on pace. And then we've got another very young left arm, Munyaradzi. He's also quite good. And a good opening batsman come leg spinner, Weedle Jizikani, as well. I think as a team, you won't find a more balanced team than us, because we work on each other's weaknesses and each other's strengths. We know, the chemistry is just so well in our team, and that's what makes us unique when we step on a field.
Absolutely. In terms of, that's amazing. You're talking about the wicketkeeper, so I would imagine even will take a good catch tumbling down the leg side.
One time.
All right, now, is there any age restriction in, say, for example, I'm 42 years old, have been a cricket fanatic for many years, was not a very good cricketer at school, and I'll be the first to admit that. But now maybe I decide, I'm actually at the ripe old age at the young age of 42 years old. I am now going to come and I'm going to give my hand, Walter. I'm going to come down to the nets, so to speak, not to the nets, but to the ground, and I want to become a B1. I always used to be a medium pacer at school, so now I'd probably be a military medium pacer now. And I want to give it a go. Is there any criteria? What would the criteria be? I know Coach Glenn will certainly give me a good working over, but in terms of people who are listening to the show right now, and it's the first time that they've heard of it, or perhaps maybe there's somebody listening to the show who says, hey, my brother is blind or is in a wheelchair. I'd like my brother to play table cricket. I'd like my blind brother to play. I'd like my cousin with an amputee to play. What are the criteria, if any?
Well, at the meantime, we welcome everyone. We don't have any age restriction, and there is no criteria as such. But as long as you are passionate and you want to play, you are welcome to come to the ground.
Okay. Now, please give us some contact details. How do we reach you?
My personal number is 0772 556 501. And I'm also on Instagram. It's at Walter Msakwa. And I'm also on Facebook, Walter Msakwa.
Wonderful. And Sanjay, you're on Facebook as well.
Yeah.
I know you're a real Facebook beaver, aren't you?
I'm on Facebook, I'm on Twitter, and you can also follow the Zimbabwe Differently Abled Cricketers page. And I think my number for whoever would want to talk to me or get in detail about how we play and so forth, or interested to come to the games and play with us, would be 0775 199 821.
Okay. And if you just tuned into Dean at Stumps, a very good evening to you. This is your weekly cricket fix. And tonight we are in conversation with the Zimbabwe Differently Abled cricket team. And basically it consists out of a combination of cricketers who play with a great deal of passion despite the fact that they are disabled, which is absolutely wonderful and incredibly inspiring and humbling, actually, to be in the mix. Ruvimbo, of course, we are live on Facebook as well.
Oh, yes, most definitely. We are live on Facebook. You can go onto the Capitalk 100.4 FM page. That's at Capitalk FM. And we've also tagged the Zimbabwe Differently Abled Cricketers ZIDAC page. So you can also catch up with the conversation that's happening there. And Dean, actually, before we go forward, there was a question that I wanted to ask, and this one would be somewhat on an admin or the policy kind of side. How much help have you maybe received from what we would call the mother body of cricket here in Zimbabwe, that's Zimbabwe Cricket, to enable you guys to do what you do?
Okay. Zimbabwe Cricket have been very, very helpful. I mean, the grounds we train on are all due to them. The initial kit we are using is actually donated by Hamilton Masakadza and his boys, the national team. That's the kit we use. And they came to us through ZC. And they really are, look, they've been very supportive outright in wanting us to go forward. They've been pushing us on huge levels. In fact, I see a point where as we go along, they'll get more involved as we go along.
All right, and maybe just another question is talking about all these other various associations, and Dean did mention it at the beginning of the show that in Australia, in New Zealand, in England, we see it has gone to the highest level. So is there like a world governing body, or does this all fall under the ICC and maybe as a different section of the ICC? And if that is so, are we also affiliated to that, and do we get assistance from that?
At this point in time, there's a World Series that just happened in UK, which India just won. So there are some meetings going on about physical disability cricket. So I'm going to say it's in the hands of ICC now, where we go. There's a number of countries now developed. There's a lot of us that are going forward. Okay. Locally in Zimbabwe, it's basically down to Zimbabwe Differently Abled Cricket, who are handling the affairs of all this at this point in time. I would like to see more of like clubs getting involved. Can we be put more into club cricket levels? Can we be put more into mainstream cricket? I think that's what I'd appreciate. The cricket lover, the cricket fans, the cricket owner, the cricket clubs. Can they embrace us? That's what I'd like to see, and that would make our development faster as well.
And in terms of the various amputees and restrictions that many people have on their hands and their legs and so on, do you play with a different cricket ball, or is it still a normal cricket ball that you'd play, for example, a club match or a one-day international match with?
No, okay.
It's a normal cricket ball,
right,
that we use. That is for the physically disabled. They use a normal cricket ball. In England, they were using a pink ball.
Yeah.
Pink ball.
Yes.
Is that the same pink ball that they'll play day and night test cricket?
Yes, correct.
Same weight, 156. Yes. But in the physically disabled, there are classification that you have to go through
Right.
so that you qualify to play in the physically disabled. That is the one that we were supposed to go for the World Series in England.
Okay.
And I would also like to add on. We also use the normal cricket rules for the physical, and then when you go to other categories like the blind, that's when rules get to change the laws.
Yeah, and then like the blind will use a different ball, which will have like a sound mechanism in it. The deaf also have a softer ball as well. So it all depends on the classifications and classes.
I mean, I remember very briefly in the early 1990s, there was a young batsman by the name of Andrew Pollock, or was it Anthony Pollock? Yes, Anthony Pollock. Now, all of you will remember Sean Pollock, and you'll remember his uncle Graham, who was a fantastic cricketer.
Yeah.
And Graham had a son by the name of Anthony Pollock, and Anthony was deaf, and he played for what was then known as Transvaal, obviously now known as the Highveld Lions. And was a very good batsman. But he played mainstream cricket, despite the fact that he was deaf. So what used to happen was the batsman who batted with him. I mean, obviously he couldn't hear things such as yes, no, or whatever the case may be. So running between the wickets certainly was a bit of a problem. And of course, trying to communicate with him in the outfield was also very difficult. But what they used to do was that sometimes they would stamp their feet. So apparently, if he wasn't he could lip read, obviously. So if he was looking at the batsman, it wasn't a problem. But if he wasn't, which I mean, obviously we all do at some point when you're at the crease, then they would still shout no, because that's natural. You know, you're not going to stop doing that. But there would be basically a stamp of the foot, which would then vibrate. And he would be able to communicate like that. Is that how it works in the deaf industry as well, in the deaf cricketing community?
Yeah, they use sign language mainly on and off the pitch, basically, and it's something like that. It's not exactly like as you say it, but it's something like that.
That's unbelievably interesting. I don't know, Rovimbo, if we've had any messages come through, but if not, the WhatsApp number is 0717 777 maybe you'd like to just send a message of congratulations and well wishes to the Zimbabwe Differently Abled cricket team, who is here with us in studio tonight, Rovimbo.
All right. Well, we do just have one message saying, guys, you are definitely inspiring. Keep up the good work, and we hope to see you guys playing in Harare Sports Club one day.
I know, wouldn't that be amazing?
Willing.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you remember, there was actually, when India toured South Africa back in 2006, there was a test match that had been played at Newlands, and what they did on one of the lunch days, during the lunch break, they actually had the South African blind cricket team playing a match on the pitch. But the problem was that, and I know this is a problem that I have as well, is the slightest noise can be very off-putting. So unfortunately, there was a helicopter that kept flying over, and I mean, of course, it wasn't deliberate. It was, just the way it is, which caused complete and utter mayhem. And despite the fact that there were 15,000 people there, they were asked to keep as quiet as possible. But despite that, the blind cricket team, or to be correct, the visually impaired cricket team, really still struggled in the outfield. They couldn't hear the ball coming to them. And there were quite a few things that they struggled with. I, for one, have lost probably 50% of hearing in my left ear. So I would imagine, being a right-handed batsman, my left shoulder and left ear would be facing the bowler. and just give us an idea. So you standing, Walter, you're standing at the crease, visually impaired.
Yes.
And so when the bowler, who's also visually impaired, when he bowls the ball, you would first say something like ready, and then the batsman has to respond by saying ready as well. Is that correct?
That's very true.
Okay, all right. And the ball has to bounce once.
No, it
it
has
can
to
bounce
bounce
Twice. The ball has to bounce
before,
twice before
Yes.
hopefully you whack it over mid-wicket.
Cow corner, to be more precise. Yeah. So yeah, that was the one message that came through there, T.
Lovely. Thank you very much for that message. Yes, they are an absolute inspiration. Who knows? Maybe you'll still see Dean du Plessis' name running in and bowling from the clubhouse end one of these fine days. But I think I'm much happier behind the microphone as opposed to behind the crease. Gentlemen, we're just going to quickly, we'll get back to what you do and what else you still would like to achieve. But we just want to focus on a bit of international cricket. And I'm sure you guys are able to talk about it just as freely. It is the ongoing Ashes series between England and Australia. And the series is, after two test matches, is Australia leading England by 1 test match to 0. They won the first one at Edgbaston by a massive 250 runs. And then, mainly due to bad weather at Lord's, it was a test match that ended in a draw due to the first day being washed out by rain. But one of the talking points, I think, is Jofra Archer. Now, I tell you what, Sanjay, to you, although you're an off-spinner, and even to you two gentlemen, Walter and Glenn, Jofra Archer must be a real inspiration, watching him running in with that easy action. Doesn't look as if he's going to bowl quickly, but he bowls it seriously quickly. So what did you say, Glenn? I mean, are you inspired? Do you like watching Jofra Archer?
Yes, he's actually in good shape. Yes, and he's. I think the conditioning trainer of the England cricket team has done a good job with him, because his load tolerance is actually quite good. Coming in from the World Cup, he was brilliant, and the way he's bowling in, running in, he's bowling at ease, and he's bowling with pace and zip. He's actually bowling well.
And as a fitness, that's a very good point that you make, because his stamina is incredibly good. But do you not think that England have to be a little careful in how they manage him? Because the last thing you want, remember, he did have a slight side strain after in fact, he was playing with the side strain during the World Cup, which just shows his stamina that he has. But how important, Glenn, is it for the bowlers to be utilised correctly and for the workload to be done correctly?
Yes, it is very, very, very much important. Like the captain has to be good in his bowling spells, how he bowls him in, because he's an explosive bowler. He doesn't need to bowl a lot of overs. You need to manage him very well. You can give him like even spells of 3 overs or 4 overs to come and burst in and run in, give it a go. Because I think captains have to be, they have to manage their pace bowlers quite well.
And one thing that you would have been interested in, I guess, a couple of years ago now, but Heath Streak, Zimbabwe's premier fast bowler. Do you know that in a test match against Sri Lanka in 1994, he bowled 49 overs? I mean, even for a spinner to get through that, that's pretty hectic. But Heath Streak, 4 for 91 in 49 overs. Back in 1994, there wasn't so much emphasis on the fitness and conditioning, but the big strong boy from Bulawayo certainly would. I mean, that's very impressive, isn't it?
Yeah.
Very.
Yes, that's very impressive. I wonder how he recuperated from that.
I don't know.
Spin bowler.
I don't know how he recuperated. Yeah. And he also once bowled 11 overs on the trot against Pakistan. 11 overs, 5 maidens, 3 for 15. With his toenail that had to be dislodged. Now, just explain as a bowler how painful that is, because that toenail, when it's not there, or when you have a troublesome toenail, as you get to the crease to deliver the ball, and you have 6 or 7 times your weight coming down. I mean, that is excruciatingly painful, but he still managed to do that.
Yeah. That's quite good. You know, I remember, like, you know, Shoaib Akhtar used to have like a hole on his cricket boot so that
yes, that's right.
they will not take in. Maybe a bit of strapping and mental toughness. Mind over matter.
I think that's one thing Heath Streak had a whole lot of, his mental toughness. Absolutely, having to sometimes. I remember there was a commentator, an Australian commentator, who made a joke, and it got out into the media, which people thought it was serious, but they said that Heath Streak, growing up as a child, his father Dennis used to make him wrestle baby rhinoceroses to get him as big and strong as what he was.
I believe that one is just a rumor.
That is very much a rumor, don't worry.
But whilst talking about Jofra Archer, though, Dean, I know there's concern about wanting to manage him and things like that. But to be fair, it doesn't look like all of the other bowlers have really been making as much in terms of inroads into that. We saw Ollie Stone, and you spoke about him prior to the test match. He broke down very easily. Just bowled in one test match and already is out for the entire series. So also at the same time, you're talking about the resources that you actually have at hand. I think the only other threatening bowler really right now that they have is maybe Chris Wokes. In terms of the spin department, it doesn't look like much is happening.
No. But I hope they persist with Jack Leach. You know, they have to use Jack Leach correctly. If you want to use him as a holding bowler, then that's all that you're going to get. So in other words, back in the 2005 Ashes, where you had your quick bowlers, you had Steve Harmison, Matthew Hoggard, Simon Jones, Andrew Flintoff, and then you had Ashley Giles, who did a very good job because all of the bowlers I just mentioned were Matthew Hoggard was more of a swing bowler, but the other three could consistently bowl at 145, 146 kilometres an hour, and they got the better, believe it or not. The pace bowlers of England got the better of Australia's batsmen. But then you had Ashley Giles come in amongst all the mayhem with his left arm spin, and he would nip out a wicket and break a growing partnership as well. So, you know, that is probably the way that they would want to go with Jack Leach. But I feel that if England want to develop him into their number one spinner, in other words, into a previous Monty Panesar or a Graham Swan, fine, Swan is a right arm off spinner, but in terms of being your attacking spinner, then they need to impart, or they need to entrust Leach and say, right, you know, we're not just going to have a relaxed field. Here's two slips, a silly mid-off, a forward short leg. Do what you got to do. And to be fair, they did do that on the fifth and final day. You had Jofra Archer running in with, you know, 4 slips and a gully from the one end, and then you had Jack Leach bowling with a pretty attacking field as well at the other when England were trying to dislodge those last 4 wickets of Australia. I have a big concern though. That is David Warner. Oh my goodness me, he is just totally out of sorts. And it's beginning to reflect in his fielding as well, isn't it? I mean, he's dropping catches, he's not fielding well. And you can always tell by a batsman when, or many times you can tell by a batsman when they're out of form, that their catches start to go down as well. I know that was a big thing with Graham Hick. When he was out of form, he normally had hands like baseball gloves, but when he started dropping catches at slip or at short extra cover, then you knew that the man was desperately out of form. Brian McMillan from South Africa was another one as well. So what do they do, Rovimbo, with David Warner?
Wow. I think it's a tough decision. I think leaving him out is an option, but maybe the biggest question is who can come in. I mean, if you look at some of the other batsmen that they have taken into consideration, they don't seem to quite come to the party. So you've got someone like, for example, a Joe Burns. He could come in. He tends to do pretty well when he's in Australia, but he could come to England and he could flop. They've tried Matt Renshaw as well. It doesn't seem to be coming out as well. So you really kind of wonder, is it maybe to try and rejig the order? That could be very dangerous for them. Or maybe do you just take the guys that you've tried and tested and haven't really come off and maybe hope that they do come off?
And of course, another thing as well, Sanjay, is that Steve Smith has been such a big part of the Australian batting lineup. He will not be playing because he's still suffering with concussion, and that's a bit of a worry. So now into the side will come Marnus Labuschagne, or if you want to be very correct, you pronounce his surname Labuschagne. Can you say Labuschagne?
Labuschagne.
Fantastic attempt.
So no, that's not a funny thing. I rephrase that. The alarming situation is that this afternoon, Marnus Labuschagne was facing Mitchell Starc in the nets, and guess what happened? He got hit on the head with a bouncer.
Oh goodness.
So, obviously, luckily there's just 2 nights for him to recover. He seems to be okay, but sometimes concussion, as we now know, has a bit of time to kick in.
Yeah.
So, gosh, it just seems to be going wrong, and that. But you kind of get the feeling that with Smith out of the side, it's almost a foregone conclusion that England will level the series.
Okay, I would argue, but I would allow Sanjay to come in on this one.
I think Australia have enough to take it. However, back on David Warner, I don't agree taking him out or leaving him out is an option. I think he'll find his peak. I think at the moment he's just under pressure, having come back into the side and stuff like that. Losing Steve Smith is going to give the Australians a big test of confidence. because I mean they were relying on him heavily and he was giving them runs. Now it's going to force them to dig deep if they want to win this match.
And whilst talking about that, Dean, and I'll just rush in to say, maybe you're talking about a test of confidence. It's also a test, I feel, of their middle order. This is where the likes of Travis Head, maybe, now has to come to the party. You've also, well, Tim Payne really hasn't been giving too much there as a lower order batsman from number 7 going onwards. But you find that middle order, if they maybe bank on Travis Head as well as Matthew Wade, who seems to be in form right now, and hopefully Manus Laboskachny. Yes, I got that one. And maybe if those 3 batsmen can hold the middle order of Australia together, then maybe they could be able to sneak past England. But England have got their own batting woes as well, Dean. Joe Root, the captain, has not been firing for all intents and purposes.
He's a constant.
And Jason Roy, their experiment, has not been firing as well. Maybe Rory Burns trying to stick around here and there. So England have got their own batting woes as well.
Yeah, neither team have batted particularly well. We've seen a few good performances. Ben Stokes with his 115 not out was very good in the second innings of the second test. Rory Burns, who scratched and scrabbled away for his innings, he's 100 in the first test match and he got a 50 as well. So he's been okay. I think in terms of Jason Roy, they have a dilemma there. You know, either well, there's a number of things. You can maybe move him down the order and maybe try and get him in at number 4 or number 5, because you've got Joe Denley, who's just there and thereabouts as well. Maybe get Joe Denley, believe it or not, what may actually work is get Joe Denley in at 3. I don't think Root should be batting at number 3. I think he should be at number 4. So maybe get Joe Denley in at 3, Root 4, Roy 5. That could possibly be an option. So Jason Roy normally in the 4-day matches bats at number 5 for Surrey. Here's a very interesting statistic about Jason Roy, though, is that the longest time he's ever spent at the crease in a first-class game is 3 hours. That's not good enough. I bet you he probably plundered 160 or 170 runs, because that's the way he plays. So I think if you want to pick Jason Roy, because he's now also getting a bit confused as to how do I play. You know, do I leave balls alone outside the off stump? Because I got into the England setup because of my flamboyant dashing stroke play. So if you do want Jason Roy to play, you're just going to have to say to him, maybe, you know what, Jason, just go out there and play your natural game. It's not ideal, because, and don't forget, the next test match is at Headingley, where there will be cloud, there will be seam and swing. So, hey, it's an interesting one. England have definitely got their hands full. But unless there's anything else anybody would like to add on the Ashes, I'd very much like to get back to our guests.
But that's why I said Australia to win it.
Oh, you're backing England.
Okay, Coach Glenn, what do you say?
I'm backing England.
England.
It will be swinging, I think, at least.
Yeah, absolutely. It'll be swinging. I totally agree with you. And what do you reckon, Walter?
Well, I think England has got a better chance of winning.
Excellent.
Because of their bowling attack is very good at the moment.
All right.
Here's another little conundrum. I want to leave Peter Siddle out and bring Mitchell Stark in. So you try and blow the England top order away with Mitchell Stark, James, and I'll bring James Patterson back. So what do we do here? James Patterson, Mitchell Stark, Pat Cummins, and Josh Hazelwood. That's what I would do. So what happens here now? That's 4 seamers. Somebody else is going to have to go.
So that will now be a little bit of a problem. Having lost Steve Smith, you would want to ensure that your batting order is pretty well set. So I do actually see that most likely there will be a seamer that will be lost there. I kind of feel like as if maybe if they want to bring in Mitchell Stark, you're most likely going to see a Peter Siddle. Poor old Siddle. But he has been doing a pretty good job so far. And so he'll be left out, and then so you'll have Stark, Hazelwood, Cummins, and then you'll have your spinning option in Nathan Lyon, because you cannot leave Nathan Lyon out. We all know the kind of destruction that he can bring, especially in a 4th innings, especially if England is going to bat last. But I would say this, though, Dean, in terms of the England top order, at the very, very top, they could try and experiment with someone else. I don't know if they're going to relinquish him from his recreational drugs, but that's Alex Hales. I feel he's done a better job opening in terms of test batting. I believe you may have seen the series when they went to West Indies. He seemed to be pretty solid at the crease. He actually had a pretty solid partnership with Joe Root in one of the test matches that they played in West Indies. So I would think it would be another experiment that they could try, because Gary Balance hasn't worked. Jason Roy hasn't worked. So all those haven't worked, and then you've got a Joe Denley once again, who you are not so sure if you bump him too far up the order, maybe you lose a very quick wicket, and then you're in all sorts of trouble. So I would think maybe an Alex Hales would be another good experiment.
Yeah, I think they're pretty determined that he will not be relinquished from his recreational drugs, and rightly so. I think he's got to do the time. And then come back hopefully a fully repented man. But he's a handful, let me tell you, Alex Hales. Don't forget he was involved in that altercation outside a nightclub in Durham back in 2017 with Ben Stokes, when a man was punched by Ben Stokes, and then Alex Hales took care of him as well. So very, very disappointing indeed. Gentlemen, in terms of, and you feel free, anyone can answer this question. It's an open question to anybody. Have you ever, in the short existence of the Zimbabwe Differently Abled cricket team, have you experienced any injuries, and how do you deal with them? And I'm not talking about a pulled muscle or a dodgy tendon. Have you actually had any issues, any nasty ones, of somebody being concussed, or maybe a ball breaking a hand, which is already in peril, due to the fact that some of the limbs aren't functioning the way that they should?
Okay, I think that is mine.
Right.
Last week, our skipper Kurwa, he got filled with the last one, leading edge, then onto his temple.
Right eye.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, goodness me.
But luckily, did not suffer any concussions.
Just 9 stitches.
Just a cut.
Yeah.
And he's recovering quite well.
Well, that's well. I guess it is the unfortunately, that is the way that it is. When we play these sports, there will always be a risk. And another question that many people would like to know: are you aware of any attempt made to try and encourage ladies with disabilities to play?
Yes, definitely. We actually have 2 ladies based in Mutare, actually.
Right.
Who play for us, and then our deaf team has both male and female team as well. So what's really hindering us is we don't have a huge turnout on the physical disability side for ladies, and that's what we'd like to see improved. But the deaf, they've got a full team on ladies.
Amazing. Yeah, I guess it's something that is still very foreign and very new, and it's just something that needs to be demonstrated at many functions as possible. So I can very easily imagine whenever the next time is that the Zimbabwe national team play a 50-over game, lunchtime would be the ideal opportunity for you guys to play, just a 5-over game, and to show the crowds that this is what you're capable of doing, which is just absolutely astounding and wonderful and very encouraging. And I think what I would like to say, as we are left with about 2 minutes of the show, is speaking from one differently enabled person to another. Don't forget, sponsorship is something that we've spoken of regularly, and it is something that you would need in order to become more successful, in order to be recognized around the world. But as important as sponsorship is, don't forget to enjoy what you're doing. And Walter spoke very, very truly of as long as you are passionate to play the game. So former Kevin Curran tried to find a fast bowler, and many people pitched up. But the first thing they asked is, how much will I be paid, and which academy am I going to? And with that, you immediately lose interest in the cricketer, because as very important as all of these contributing factors are, the most important thing, and it was a lesson I had to learn very, very hard, in a hard way, as a blind cricket journalist, was to enjoy what I'm doing, as opposed to trying to progress to the next level, I guess.
I think this is what makes us differently abled.
Yes.
We currently fund ourselves to games with our own funds. We currently putting our own efforts to do what we need to do to get there. So for us at this point in time, and I speak for many players, it's not about the financing at this point. It's our cricket, where we're going with it and how well we're developing. And that's what we're enjoying.
And as much as we understand that finance is incredibly important because there's families to look after and everything else, but it's nice to hear that there's passion and pride and enjoyment. Yes. Gentlemen, it's been an absolute privilege, and I mean that, for having every one of you here in the studio. Sanjay Patel, Walter Musakwa, the head coach and assistant coach and conditioning coach, Glenn as well. Thank you, Coach Glenn. It's been an absolute joy and pleasure. Thank you to Ruvimbo for always making sure that everything is done correctly, and we'll be back again next week. But until then, it's good night.
Tune in again next week and catch Dean at Stumps on Capitalk 100.4 FM, leading the conversation.
It's showtime. Harare's Heartbeat, Capitalk 100.4 FM, will be coming to you live from the Zimbabwe Agricultural Show, running under the theme